For the August 9th, 2023 meeting of the Stoughton, the South Elementary School Building Committee. There being a quorum present. Not on the agenda, but I'm going to slip in the beginning. We ordinarily do keep the first agenda item open for community, for public comments. Nobody's here today anyway, but anyone who wants to address the committee with questions and comments is always welcome to do so, and we always provide the opportunity to do that at the beginning of every meeting. Moving on, item 2 is acceptance of minutes for the July 12th, 2023 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those? I know they were emailed out a couple days ago.
I have one question. So it says Jake Dorr absent, however, he seconded in motion the third item. So I think that might have been a typo.
Oh, under absent. Okay, I'll change that. I'll revise. Thank you.
Good catch. Any other changes or comments? And if not, is there a, oops, sorry.
I'm showing here as absent as well. I wasn't there for, I think, for the first 5 minutes, and I think I left maybe about an hour and a half into it. But I
That's
didn't
right.
participate, so
Oh, that's right.
so you might not have known I was there.
I'll revise.
And one more quick revision for Lindsay Kreckler's name. It's Krckler. So there's just a K missing between the C and the L.
Repeat that again?
For Lindsay Kreckler, for the school committee, it's Kreckler. So it's just a K missing.
Oh, up top.
It's just
here.
in the roll call.
I have it
Just
on
in
the
the
roll
roll
call.
Just in the roll call, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Thank you.
Oh, and I'll note, actually, for our record here tonight, is Jake still on?
Yes.
Jake Dorr is participating remotely,
Okay.
and this wasn't posted as a remote meeting, but the town of Stoughton does have a remote meeting policy, and with a finding from the chair of acceptable absence. I was on the Board of Selectmen when we adopted that, so I think being home with a newborn is acceptable and meets the criteria for remote participation. And nobody else is remote, if
No.
I'm correct, Don, right? Yeah, great. So on the minutes, with those changes, if there's nothing else. So Dom, did you get those
Yes, I-
few changes? Great. Is there a motion to accept the minutes with those changes?
Second.
Motion made, seconded.
Who was second?
Steve Cave.
Steve? Thank you.
Yep. Last chance for comments or questions. If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Anybody abstain?
I'll abstain. I wasn't here last week.
Same here. I tried.
I know you did.
I did.
I saw
You saw
you-
that blip.
I kept hitting it and hitting it. I just couldn't get it.
I saw you pop up.
Actually, it says that in the minutes, too.
Thank you. It was 11 p.m. Okay, so I started up.
Item 2, we're going to table if there's no objection, and there can't be because we have nothing to vote on anyway. Then we can do that on the 23rd, Dom?
Yeah, we'll talk about the 23rd later in the meeting, but yeah.
Okay.
We can do that, like we did when we had COVID, we did remote signing on invoices.
Cool. Item 3, community forum recap.
Courtney wanted just some bullet points, we just wanted to,
Right, I mean, we did get a lot of good feedback, we haven't really met since the community forum, I know the school committee. The school committee met on the 26th and did a little recap of it, but we haven't met as a committee. You know, we got a lot of feedback, I think the mailers were a good thing, so we're gonna look at doing that in the future as well in terms of communication. And some of the feedback we got, I think that Carl from our group and Tim and TJ, you all responded to things, as well as Joyce and principals. Everyone did a good job in terms of responses. I don't think there's any outstanding questions on there, and just wanted to make sure that as a group that we haven't heard anything else in terms of feedback from the forum itself that we need to respond to. Any follow-up from the community? Okay.
No, I agree, though. Even my parents said they love the mailers. Those seem to be a big hit.
I think that's a win going forward.
And the comments, we got plenty of comments at the forum itself about those also, which I thought was great. People said, you know, we got credit for being open and transparent, which if we weren't, we'd hear about it. But surprising that we actually get credited for it while we're being open and transparent, because it's usually something that comes out when you're not when you are, but,
Yep.
so yeah, that was great.
And it's usually pretty inexpensive, isn't it?
About $5,000.
Yeah, relatively, yeah, to get
The
the,
whole community?
yeah, to get the whole town, yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty cheap.
And I'll note also, that comes out of Vertex's budget, and it wasn't a budgeted item, so that's something that they eat in the process. I don't know if we all realize that, but unless I misstated that, right?
No, that one we can eat with.
Yeah, right. Right, I mean, that, and DRA does the same thing along the way. There are unexpected expenses that they can't, that they haven't budgeted for, but they do assume under their current contracts, so.
I do think we are going to look at doing further strategically, maybe in the fall, maybe certainly in the spring leading up to another, using that as a way to get people to come to forums and educate them on what's happening.
If we do a town-wide mailing, broadcast all over social media and otherwise, and we get the same audience, that was a small audience, given the amount of effort and energy to bring it out, but it's all we could do, I imagine. I
Yeah.
mean,
But it does work, so.
yeah.
We, yeah, definitely improved the attendance from previous ones. It was a summer forum as well, so we should look ahead and think what dates would be opportune for the community this fall. We would like to do another one in the fall.
Could it be remote as well?
It was.
It
Yeah.
was remote.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was
this
I
was,
think there were quite a few on remote,
I
correct?
think you had like 25 to 30. I have to ask Jeff, but that were on, if I remember correctly. So that was a good number of people that, and there were questions that came in from remote viewers too. So that was great. One thing we'll think about too is actually printing out the presentation for folks that have any visibility issues or anything in the future. And we'll just kind of look at, make sure accessibility and everything is good in the future too. We got a couple of those comments for the forum, so. That's it. I mean, I just want to make sure there wasn't any other feedback that you all have heard, separate from the comments that we received during the meeting. Okay.
Great. So on to item 4, PSR submission status.
Well, we're all heading in the same direction. Courtney's got the video here. We'll take a look at, kind of just updating a bit, but we can talk about where we're at right now.
You promised a video?
I'm sorry. You can tell I'm getting close.
Well, I know,
The presentation slides.
yeah, the presentation slides. So we sent these out earlier. These slides are somewhat tied to the MSBA meeting that's going to be coming up in the fall, where we talk to them about our process, where the project is, the preferred option that's selected. So we talk about everything about redistricting. We'll talk about the enrollment, and basically the goals of the project. So there will be slides that Dr. Baeta, that you speak to and the district will speak to, and then it's going to transition over to the design components of the project too. So these slides that we sent out today, they're intended to be a first draft that we can look at and refine. But what we would like to do is actually do a formal presentation of this virtually on the 23rd, so that we've actually gone through it as a group and everyone has consensus, and that's when you kind of vote on the PSR as well moving forward in terms of that submission.
But we'll send this out before the 23rd.
Right. So there's nothing on here that you haven't seen in terms of, the community outreach. We've talked about the preferred option. We've talked about something new that we have included, that if you've looked at the slides that I sent out today, we did start talking about breaking down the neighborhoods. There were some concerns of people talking about 3-story schools versus a 1-story school. And we wanted to talk about how this fits the ed plan that you guys wrote and supports it in terms of the upper and lower elementaries. And then the learning commons being the heart of the school. So we'll point out those key spaces as part of this and talk about just the plan organization inspirations for the design elements in the school are going to be, of these key spaces, are going to be things that we talk about and highlight, wanting to bring in the warmth. I think we got good response from some people in the community about the woody feel of the building being a school in the woods. So we want to bring those elements into the building as well. And we will talk a little bit about the site and the organization. We are going to talk about Fano Drive a little bit and how that's going to integrate into the project in terms of site access from both Park Street and Sumner, as well as the access around the separation of the traffic around the site and site circulation.
Well, maybe on Fano, I don't think this committee's aware of at least about the movement toward a connecting Fano right through, or did that?
We did discuss
We
it.
Okay, you
did,
okay, all right.
briefly, but not much. We
Okay,
were,
well, I just I wasn't even sure
Right.
that was brought up back then, so if it's been brought up, but that's, we have had meetings with town officials and the town engineer and the town planner to go over the benefits of connecting the road through from Park to Sumner. And everyone, from a lot of reasons, and traffic and access and egress, emergency services, there's a lot of reasons why that's a benefit for us to do that. It's not going to be inexpensive. We're pricing that connection through as a separate alternate in the pricing right now. But because it would be a full acceptable roadway, public roadway. So that's something just, as we look into it, we'll have to see what that number is and whether it's the committee's choice to kind of move forward with it. But that's how the PSR is going to present it, that it's an option that we are going to consider in the fall as we move through the, schematic design process. And we'll probably talk further with the town about funding options around that connection, that finishing point, that finishing part of that Fano Drive. But that's kind of, I think, it, TJ, unless you feel there's
yeah, no, it was pretty clear from the beginning. The access that this lot has on Park Street was unusable. We needed to look into, or very, very difficult. We had to talk to the owners of Fano Drive. They were only more than willing to talk. So we've had some talks with them, and we'll move forward from there.
So you can see at that point,
Yeah.
from that point to the end of the paving, continues down through to Sumner Street.
Right. So the base pricing would be servicing the school, and then we would price what we're calling the Fano extension, which includes all utilities, full roadway with sidewalk, bike lane, all the way to the other side. And then also some street lighting as well.
Can I ask a question? For you? Is lighting on Park Street a definite, or is that still up in the air?
We are pricing, I believe, a signal over here on this side.
Is that what you're asking?
A traffic signal?
Dr. Riley?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
I would think so.
the concern that I have is we're also building a brand-new fire station right up the street with new lighting. And I would have some concerns about only having one entrance and exit on and off Park Street. And that was a discussion we had with the town engineer around the extension, as I think we're calling it, on Fano. My biggest concern is if you take a look at some of the national police chief studies, you take a look at everything to do with, service delivery model around safety, having a full second entrance and exit makes a lot of sense. And will probably only be seen as a positive by MSBA, although there is no money that comes from that with MSBA. Because our plans would be, our emergency plans for that building would be contingent on some type of a secondary exit, of which keeping it up in Massachusetts with only having dirt down or something is not going to go over well.
Through you, TJ, to Joe, when you met with the town engineer, did they talk? I mean, if this is going to be a regular roadway now instead of just a partial little place, I would think the fire engines would want to use this to get across.
So, So specifics and details of the fire department, we didn't get into, but I think as a road going from that Park Street over to the Sumner Street side, it makes a lot of sense in terms of public safety.
Maybe the town might come up with some money to help fund us?
Yeah, so that'll be the big question, I think, that needs to go to the select board and the town manager, and all involved will be that process through you folks in terms of, do we go after any potential grant money that could become available, which is always difficult. We are talking a lot about some stormwater situations down there that Mark Tisdale brought up that would have to be looked at because of the way things flow in that area. And again, I can't speak specifics because that's not my area, but the other process is, are you doing that as part of the debt exclusion, or are you doing that as part of borrowing and looking at transportation funds that could potentially be made available? There is a lot of discussion on the millionaire's tax and where that funding is going or not going. Are new projects being considered, or is it just old projects? I don't know.
And Courtney will talk more about it because we have our consultants out there, but we, as part of the Fano extension estimate, we're also looking at a traffic signal on that end of the road too, so.
Yeah, I think we're currently pricing a beacon and crosswalk over there, and we could have them, look at the cost of a signal on that side as well.
Yeah.
It's also, just to add to, if we're reserving a parcel for future town use, or however you want to put it, and that would be the primary access to the other parcel that we'd be keeping anyway, so, I mean, even if it's not used by the school now, it would be used by the town presumably someday, so. Still expensive.
So,
To the extent it might be useful, I mean, since I'm on the select board, I view this as the street commissioners, as an essential part of our duties to make sure that there's access to our facilities. So, I'm working with members of the select board and also people within the town to figure out how to pull this off and how to fund it. We do have funding, for example, to pave roads. There is funding for that. To what extent can we use that? Or if there's an additional article that has to go forward, we will. But I mean, for the sake of seeing this project through and making sure that when we show up at town meeting to have this project in its totality funded, we don't get the question then, well, how are you going to get in? How do people get in and out? We want to cross this off our list pretty early. So I'm going to be working on that and trying to get that across the finish line so that we can come in with a nice, clean proposal.
Courtney, could I just add, it may just be minutia, but having traveled that road with my own kids, in the wintertime, the sun hits you right in the face up Park Street, and it is blinding. So we're not doing the assessments in the wintertime, so I just wanted to highlight that to whoever is going to be doing this.
That's good to
Because
know.
it is very blinding, especially snow. It's just something that I'm throwing on my shades in the winter. It's kind of hysterical as I'm driving them to school. So something to be aware of, especially how that moves in that area.
is it specifically at?
On Park Street, when you turn onto
Right.
Park and you're going straight up, that sun is hitting you at that time in the morning quite
Okay.
hard, so.
We have terrible problems with the crosswalk that was there, the crossing guard, and to the point that we, last year, made that right side pickup only, just because endangering people crossing when the sun was blinding.
No, that's good to know, because we
Yeah.
are going to be doing the study in the fall, so.
It's more when we
yeah.
go into winter,
Yeah.
but it's just something to think of.
Just because I had to deal with this in another district, Park Street is a state road, so that's a different process, right?
Yes.
Part of it isn't, but I think this part is.
You're right.
Yeah, I think the state road ends right around where the fire station's going in.
Okay.
But,
Thanks.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll be
We have reached out to Mass DOT already. They don't want to talk to us until we have a finalized plan. So once we get this into the next phase, I think that's when we'll be able to have conversations with them.
I should point out also, I forgot to mention, and Steve picked it up, that after we talked with the owners of Fano Drive, I was talking with Tim, we engaged Steve to get the Board of Selectmen, town manager on board and active in this. So that's what he was referring to, that it's, as street and road, as road commissioners, eventually it's going to hit their desk, so that was helpful. Appreciate that. Otherwise, we'd just be talking it ourselves. Anything else on this, Courtney? I
Well,
don't want to
it
cut
kind
you
of
off.
ties, no, it ties into this Fano Drive discussion, ties into the additional services that we're looking at for getting an additional survey for that extension. Because our surveyors have gone to the edge of this property line, which you can't see in this image. I don't know if I have one. But I do have one later on. 1 second. Next slide.
Right there.
So you can see where they've kind of tapered off with the survey, and it's about the same, it's pretty close to the same length on the other side, that they're going to have a team go out there and then do where it intersects Sumner and check all the utilities over there on that side too. So that's part of what we need to look at, especially if we're going to be looking at drainage for that extension and drainage design. So our civil engineers, it is going to be an intensive study in how that works and what they can do to manage the Fano Drive drainage without trying to overload Park or Sumner. So they're going to be asking for some additional services there, but that all should be within the appropriation. We just have to present that to you to get approved.
Cool. Anything else on item 4, PSR submission, aside from,
Can we just go back to the
Sure.
second group? I think it's where they talk about the gymnasium size. So I just wanted a little bit, when I was reading this earlier, a little bit more clarity on the current gym is 6,500 square feet.
Well, this is MSBA guidelines that you're seeing on here compared to what we're proposing for the South Elementary
Oh,
School.
it's not what it currently is, and now
No,
we're deficient.
the current
Okay,
one is
because I was gonna say
extremely
we are in a
small.
dire
Yeah.
strait in that
Yeah.
situation. Okay, thank you. That's all that I.
Yeah, we'll say the new, yes, we'll say the new
That's-
elementary school
Yeah,
instead
I
of
think the
South.
South threw me off as being the comparison currently versus being what it will be in this PSR going forward.
So when we present this to MSBA, they see this as South Elementary School, which is why it's here, but I'll put in parentheses so that we have,
Thank you.
so it meets everybody's expectations, because, yeah, the way that they file this and the way that they track everything is by South still, until we formally change that. So, yeah, your existing one is not close to 6,000. Yeah, so this is outlining variations from their guidelines that we have to highlight for them. And part of that, and the biggest part of that is, the special education component, which both in the ed plan, and then Dr. Baeta has worked with ed as well in terms of putting together a memo that ties into that and it supports your ed plan and for the RISE program. So those two things are going to be very helpful, and hopefully, this isn't something that's usually funded, but it goes through the whole state review process with DESE. The hope is that it does get reimbursed.
And because they're, and Courtney can speak more to this, they have quite a bit of submissions at the end of August. They've asked us to submit some material ahead of time, which is a good faith effort on our part. So we'll be submitting things that are pretty much standard material, just to get a head start. But probably the space survey will go out, and that somebody will flag that at the MSBA, because they'll see the square footage of space. So but better they see them right away, and then they'll respond right away, and we'll get on track with them. And I'm sure it'll come up in the meeting in September.
Definitely.
So,
One of the topics they also want us to speak out is sustainability with the new school. So we'll talk about the anticipated lead ratings. We'll talk about just some of the things that we're going to be incorporating into the design to support that as well. So it includes, PV, it's going to include our building systems, our lighting, and then some of the site elements that are part of the design as well. And then, of course, they also like to know what is going to happen with the rest of the building stock as part of this project. So that's something that we're going to have to speak to. We know that there's folks in town working on that.
Courtney, just back to the photovoltaic, so we're pricing it as an alternate, but we're likely not carrying that cost in the, I guess we have to discuss that, but I think when we talked, we're not carrying that cost in the estimate, photovoltaics.
We're carrying right now the infrastructure for that. So we have to
Okay.
figure out how it's going to be carried forward, whether, that, you're right, it is a discussion. Do we carry it as part
Right,
of
so
our
we
estimate
need to discuss,
or not?
I don't know what it'll be, but it'll be several $1 million probably, that either it needs to be purchased as a private purchase agreement, or the town can carry it, but, we're gonna be dealing with, and we're not really at that, we can deal with this in the fall, it's not really we need to solve it for August, but we're gonna have to decide, how much can we put into this that the town can fund.
Doesn't it depend on how close we are to our lead goals?
Well, no, I think we're thinking we probably will want photovoltaics.
Yeah.
It's whether we buy it through a private, where it's
Yeah,
a developer-based solution that the town pays, the
So-
developer owns it.
So Courtney, when you say we budgeted for the infrastructure, or however, you're just talking about the roof framing?
Well, the roof framing, any electrical infrastructure required for an inverter and all that, not the actual panels themselves. So that we will need PV if we want to meet those lead percentages. MSBA recently issued a project advisory which changed the reimbursement percentage from 2%. You can achieve up to 4% now based on, which credits you go for. Ideally, we'd like to, if we don't have PV, it's going to be very hard to get the total 4%.
So I would like very much to know, and I'll put feelers out to my facilities group, as to how many schools are going with owning it themselves versus the agreements. I can say we had not had a great experience owning it with the high school, and Select, I think it's Select, who is working in all municipalities in Massachusetts, has approached us several times after speaking to the selectmen, because we have the roofs in town that are big enough for PV. We just haven't bitten the bullet there to look at doing it on existing buildings. But I'd, like I said, very much like to know that people have had good experiences with that. And the couple of people I've talked to have, before we make that commitment again for the town.
Yeah, we can certainly, we're dealing with it on a few projects. I
Good.
don't know, Chin Westwood is now not buying, they're doing a,
They're on the fence.
okay, so,
They're waiting, they're trying to sort through a funding possibility with the ARPA funding.
Okay.
So I want to clarify that what Courtney just said is that we may have to own as part of the project some amount of PV just so that we can meet the
Okay.
4% additional reimbursement credit. This is what used to be the 2%. They just changed it this past June. And so we will carry in the base budget to include the, whatever that number is, to get to the 4% additional reimbursement.
Okay.
And then beyond that, that will be a separate conversation.
Got it.
And it pretty much at the moment that the choice is either that or probably the only other way to do it is geothermal. And that probably is a higher
we're not
number.
moving with geothermal either, right? Because we're using,
That would add easily $3 to $5 million on this job.
right. So we can get more analysis of at least what's happening on our projects, and
Sure.
Gary can tell us what's happening on theirs.
How much,
We need to make an informed decision going in.
Yes, yeah. So that'll be it.
how much roof space do we have?
I haven't done a calculation on it in terms of roof space, but we are targeting right now, we want to settle the final orientation of the building for the best solar orientation, but the areas that are highlighted in orange are just tentatively targeted for the solar. The gym's a nice flat area. We have to, what's not shown is all our rooftop units that are going to be on here as well. So there's a balance of, they take up roof space, but they also cast shadows, so we have to look at all of that. We will do a more in-depth assessment in the next phase in schematic design.
Are portals not in play at all in terms of solar? Carports?
Oh, okay.
Usually the cost of that is significantly more expensive because we already own the infrastructure in terms of, you already own the roof, and then so we're just making the roof a little bit stiffer to take the additional 3 to 5 pounds of load. And so whereas a brand new structure that additional cost is quite high. It is doable, it just might.
And we are doing it in, I know we did it in Natick with, and we're doing it in Westwood, are we? No, we're not.
No, Westwood is
No,
not
they're
doing
not,
that
okay.
because we're not, Westwood is not interested in going to complete net zero.
We are turning in a lead scorecard with this submission. And we had briefly discussed that before you came online with this project, that we were gonna, that is a credit that you can go for in addition to the solar component. So it wasn't one of the ones that rose to the top, but it is something that's possible and other schools have done it.
I think maybe on this particular topic is that for the time being that the plan is to have carry sufficient amount of PV so that we can get that 4% as a baseline. And then we will evaluate and review what's the most advantageous for the project in terms of both capital costs and as well as the sort of return. And then we can then make a decision we'll bring it back to a community for review.
So just as a real quick question, and it doesn't have to be addressed today, but what would be, by putting solars on there along with the HVAC systems that don't show on that, what would be your typical load on those roofs in terms of sustaining winter snowstorms? For example, about 5-7 years ago, we got back-to-back storms where we were all running around trying to get snow off of our roofs.
So the modern building for the roof load is 40 pounds of snow load, and that's very high. That's as much as a regular floor.
So these roofs would be...
So, and then we will be adding another 5 to 10 pounds, depends on the engineer, on top of that in addition. And then they would also factor in snow drift and all that. So short answer is that should not be an issue.
Thank you.
Look at Chen pulling these numbers off the top of his head, too.
That's why he's doing it for a while.
Yeah, done that a few days.
And our engineer will definitely be on the conservative side of that.
Yeah.
All right, anything else on this?
No, I think we're,
Well,
You want to go?
yeah, keep going until you're done. I don't want to cut you short.
nope, it's just a recap and then,
Yeah, so what we're going to do is, we'll send this out ahead. We need a vote from the committee to submit, and we had tentatively scheduled 2 weeks from today, on the 23rd, to do a virtual. And we can just vote. We'll just have 2 items on the agenda, the invoice and the PSR. And if there are any questions, we'll have, obviously discussions about the PSR.
and the PSS potentially for the.
And the PSS,
Yeah.
just so we understand the acronyms, is basically it's a professional services that are addition. We had already approved that, the additional addendum that DRA got for the work that we needed for our consultants out there. Within that, we're going to do the added work on FANO. We're trying to stay within that budget right now. So we're kind of moving things around. Well, Courtney's moving things around to see if we, where we thought we were going to do certain things, we're not going to do as much of, but we're going to make sure that, especially our civil engineer is out there check because it was, brought to our attentions by Mark Tisdale, what he's looking for, so we're going to address his concerns, and obviously the concerns that are required for the project going forward for that connection with Fano Drive, so we'll give you that update at the virtual meeting on the 23rd, so. Then kind of dovetailing into the next item on the agenda is really Courtney's consultants have been out there this week.
Correct.
If you want to just give a quick update on that.
Right, the geotechnical work is ongoing right now. The site clearing has been done, and they will be starting doing the borings for the school site. And then there will be a couple test pits on Fano Drive as well.
We're trying to marry that with what was originally part of the scope
Right.
with the extension, so we're not coming back. So we kind of verbally told Courtney to proceed, even though we haven't gotten approval yet, but I think everybody's in agreement. We have to go this way, and we're trying to be diligent about saving costs as far as going forward.
Right.
I have one question about the site that I asked the last time too, about traffic and drop-off. Has anything been updated of that, or has the traffic pattern changed, or?
Courtney can show it a little
I
bit
have
more
one
clearly.
diagram that showed it a little bit.
Yeah.
Needs to be, need to go on.
So with your cursor, I think you can walk it through a bit.
Yeah, the blue, I'm sorry, yeah, it's a bad angle for those
Yeah.
of you up here.
You want to sit out there, Diane?
No, that's okay.
All right.
That's okay, I can look, Katie's got it right here.
Oh, okay, great. So the blue dashed line is the intended parent drop-off coming from Park Street. Obviously, if this becomes a full road, you would have traffic coming from both directions, and we'd have to look at how this entrance to the site is oriented, because right now it's not oriented for traffic coming the other way. But the intent is that that parents could come along this side and drop off towards the main entrance of the school over here.
Right.
So there's a short walk from the drop-off area to the main entrance of the school.
Right.
We are going to do a stack calculation to see how many cars can actually stack to Fano Drive, to make sure that there's no issues or concerns with the number of cars that are able to fit on the site.
I know I brought up the last time about the, I guess it must be like a fire lane that goes around the building, if that could be used as a drop-off and keep it away from all of the parking.
Well, that would be an administrative decision on how that works. Right now, the intent is to make this loop that's in red around the building as the fire loop.
Right.
And then potentially as parking for overflow event parking, you could have parallel parking along there. Not drawn lines, but it's something that could be used for overflow, and you could still get an emergency vehicle around. But in terms of drop-off of kids, that would all have to be, discussed with administration and how that would work. Because the intent is for these two wings, the kindergarten wing would be on one side, on the first floor, and the first grade wing would be on the other side. So you would have kids coming through the classroom wings versus coming through the main entrance or the cafeteria space.
Right. So it just seems like such a long place. I've sat in many places dropping off kids, I'm sure you guys have too. And it just seems like that would be much more efficient, maybe, is the word I'm looking for. And we'd probably fit 50 cars in that.
Yeah,
in
something
lane.
that's a little challenging too with this site is you can kind of see the site
Right.
contour lines. The topography drops down quite significantly from this point here down to Fano Drive. So this slope over here is not something that is considered ADA accessible right now. It's more emergency and receiving type traffic. So it does flatten out a little bit over here, but it starts sloping on this side.
So with the plan that's already there, and I guess I'll ask you to look at some of this stuff, as they're the ones that are kind of planning this stuff. It just, to me, it looks like it's going to be confusing for maybe not so much the parents coming in, but for teachers trying to get in to park. Everybody's going to be coming in that same entrance, which will make it more difficult.
We've done this before where it's a timing thing, and in terms of when teachers are getting there and when students are getting there. So we've seen it work like this, but yeah, if there's a concern about how those two, pedestrian traffic and the vehicular traffic, we can look at that with you.
My concern just is, it sounds like it's more like this drop-off, this idea of just drop-off, they pull up, they drop off, and they go. And especially with littles, that's not what happens. Parents want to physically walk them to the.
It does happen in other schools, though.
Okay, and that's fine. I just know it hasn't historically happened in ours, and some it may. And I just think sometimes it's hard to break parents out of, this is my kindergartner.
Right.
I want to walk them in, at least for a period of time. Because even now, we park up it, right? So I think we need to take that into account, because right now that parking there looks like it's going to cover just teacher, staff, admin. It's not going to really have spillover to accommodate anybody else, given the school size. But I strongly urge people just to consider that, because there are some of us who are going to pull up and be like, go right on in.
Yeah.
And there are others who, they want to park somewhere and they're not comfortable.
I do think, though, that because we've gone through it at our school, the parents very quickly get trained and comfortable with whatever routine is put in place for their kids. I think it's just that period of time where they need to trust that everything will be okay, and it doesn't take very long. It's, what, a matter of like 2 weeks maybe for them to kind of get used to the.
And then there will be some amount of visitor spot that's allocated in the parking calculation. I think we have 150.
We have one, I think they got it up to
175.
183, actually.
Okay, 183, so the
from last
150 is roughly the sort of
Staff.
the staffing level, and then so there will be, it's not unusual in this kind of scenario that they will always factor in X number of visitor spot, and then those are during drop-off hours, you don't have that many more visitors, and then so frequently those are used for the parents. Then when the kids is having a bad day, you just park and then walk the kids in, and then so that usually works.
As long as there's a strong process from the get-go, between staff, teachers, and admin to start, because if it just keeps changing, then parents are going to lose confidence in it. So that's all that I ask, that there's something very strong from the beginning in place to move us forward in that direction.
Can I, I'm sorry, do we have to submit this with the PSR, or is this?
We have to talk about site circulation and drop off and, yes.
This is not final plan by any
Yeah,
stretch of
yeah.
imagination, but it's just, MSBA requires you to demonstrate that you thought about it. And then so that the questions will come up, and then so you can refine it in the schematic design phase, and then you can say so when MSBA may ask you, have you thought through all this? And then the answer is, we have the first draft, and then we're going to be refining that.
Here was why I asked, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I humorously I sent it to Courtney too, more to make you laugh than anything, Courtney, I humorously took a deep dive into where traffic would be coming from, depending on the redistricting plan. And there were two basic, there are 4 plans, but 2 of them they're basically 2, right? And the one that extends towards West Street, most of those people will be coming in a Sumner Street access way. Under the other 2, most of those cars will be coming in a Park Street access. And it's just clear that the split will be somewhere in the Sumner Street, Birch Street, at that Sumner Street, Birch Street split, where you got to make a decision which one's going to get me to the front door quickest. So it very much, as much as we wanted to not look at the redistricting options now, I don't know how we do that and fix a traffic plan or a traffic circulation plan. And I hated to bring it up because it is a longer discussion, but you get that's not my stupid plan, is it?
Yep.
Wait, who's
It is, and those are my notes.
that's you.
There's a bunch of typos in my notes, but so
I won't zoom into those.
I went through, and the purple is those people who who could be, the blue are the people who will use definitely the Sumner Street access. The red are the people who will definitely use the Park Street access. And the purple are those who can choose. And they would choose at the Birch Street, Sumner Street split. And there's going to be a ton of traffic at, under redistricting Plan 1. There'll be a ton of traffic at the Plain Street, Route 138, at the Town Spa, taking a left. Gay Street then picks up a bunch of traffic. And that all filters in, as I said, to that Birch Street, Sumner Street split, where then you make the choice whether to go in this exit, or that entrance, or the other entrance. And I think my guess is it's probably 6 of one, half dozen of the other from that point, because you have to go all the way down Fano to get to the front door of the school. But
You may also want to consider that the overflow may go to Atkinson Extension,
Right.
up that way
Well-
and around to get onto Sumner that way. That's just another,
if you look at my notes,
Potential.
somewhere it says in my notes, it says, there will be a bunch of people who, if they don't know the Atkinson Ave extension route right now, they'll learn it pretty darn quickly.
So can I just?
Sure, please.
Because I think this is a great discussion as a former principal, and when kids get to school. We've also just moved to free transportation. And what research will show is that because it's no longer, quote, a local school, if you will, you're broadening out, more parents are more likely to choose the free transportation. Therefore, your actual number of cars coming into the driveway may significantly actually drop because of what, so the purples are more than likely the people that are taking the bus.
That was
More than likely.
another note I made.
Okay.
So you're
I
right.
didn't read your notes because of the spelling errors.
No,
You
no,
wouldn't
I
allow me to.
I agree entirely. I mean, I did it hastily, but, I said,
But just to that
You're
point,
right.
I think it's important because the concern that I would have is that if we didn't have that opportunity of transportation, then we're creating backlogs all over the town that are pretty significant to commuters in general. I mean, I'm newly coming into town, just crossing Washington and finding out that I need to go around as much as possible, so I'm not sitting there trying to take a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn.
yeah, and like everyone else here does, you're going to do everything to avoid the Stoughton Center. Everything. And from there, I mean, if you're at the outskirts of, like, redistricting plan at, like, where Walgreens and CVS, that's the furthest point of redistricting schemes, 2 and 3, I think it is, or 2. How you get from there to the school then is all the way down Turnpike Street and come back, because there's no crossways, or you cut through Prospect. And those are the only ways. So,
How will this, you talked about these districting scenarios having to be decided a few years from now. What does it change the design one or the other?
well, I did this right after you and I went to the property, and we were still just talking about one access off of Park Street and Fano Drive. And, that led me to this, wondering like, geez, the people coming from West Street, if that's the redistricting plan that's chosen, if they have to go to the Park Street entrance, what are the pinch points on that route? Well, Plain Street, Washington, Gay Street, Washington, Gay Street, Sumner, and on down the road. But the point being is, if you choose one of the other redistricting plans, you almost, I don't want to say don't need, but almost all of the traffic under the, I want to say 3 and 4 or 2 and 3, one of the other ones that are more focused on the right side of the town as we look, almost all of those would be, it would be more accessible for them to use the Park Street access. So when I say that, if let's say we chose the, redistricting plan 1 that extends, that, not us, let's say the school committee chose that. Well, I think it would be a huge inconvenience for them to go around to Park Street, but on the other hand, if we were just to do 3 and 4 of the other redistricting plan, I mean, it's important to have two means of access.
But I guess what I'm saying is, there's other reasons that we are connecting Fano to some, Park to Sumner,
Right.
than just
Right.
that. I mean,
My original reason for bringing this up was, I don't think holding off for 3 years, or 2 or 3 years, to decide on what redistricting, I think there needs to be some sort of firmer
well, I mean,
concept.
I think there can be sort of a leaning toward it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just saying the
Yeah.
final lines and all we talked about.
And the gist of it, Tim, was because depending on what you choose, traffic is coming to one entrance or the other, and that matters for interior circulation primarily, I would think. I could be
Yeah.
wrong.
I mean, I guess if the decision is made to connect Park and Fano, which I think there's a lot of compelling reasons that we would do that beyond, then it's going to be a factor that needs to be decided, that school committee needs to take into account when they choose their redistricting option. They have those two options. They have those two egress and entrance options, and then probably will make one more attractive for them to choose, I would think, to get there. But I think that's the thing. I mean, if we're going to connect them, which there's reasons why we're doing that are beyond even that, but
No, you're right.
it becomes, I just think it's just going to give more flexibility for the school committee to make its,
And I didn't mean to get us off track. My original question was, do we have to include this in the PSR? Because it's definitely going to, I would imagine it's definitely going to change if we have, a primary access from Sumner Street onto Fano as opposed to all of our traffic directed from Park.
what's going to change?
Yes and no.
The interior circulation won't change.
Where it stacks.
Which way it comes in, you will have different turning pattern onto the lot. But once you're inside of the lot, it doesn't change as much. And then so,
It doesn't change how the stacking is, because I was seeing stacking, this is where,
You could, you'd still potentially come in here.
right, you still come in the same spot.
Right.
Aren't we stacking, even if you only had Park Street, aren't we stacking all within our property? We're not
That has
stacking.
not been done yet.
Yeah.
We haven't done that level of traffic analysis, and roughly calculated that it is also potentially possible to administratively stack the vehicle into the parking area, so that if you just,
If we have to.
So if we have to, so we do have options in there. So this plan at the moment has plenty of flexibility
Yeah.
that does not lock us in.
That's the key.
And then
That's the key.
that allows us to have, multiple options before we have to utilize things like multiple starting time or something like that.
cool, thanks. Jim. All right, that's enough of my nonsense. Courtney, anything else?
I think we're all set with item number 5, unless you had anything else.
No.
Okay.
When will your consultants be done, do you think?
With which part?
What is the plan just for the 8:23 meeting? Are we planning on posting to a Dropbox pieces of the PSR?
Yeah, we can do a share, like a link to,
We want to let people know that that's going to come to them, or?
yeah, and MSBA actually wanted early access too, so everyone will be able to kind of.
So that will be option for people to actually read it as we submit it to the MSBA,
Right.
in addition to what we'll present on the 23rd.
So, yeah, it could easily go live on, the 20th or something like that, and then
Yeah.
we can continue to populate it with anything that's left. I think the geotech will follow probably the last
Yeah.
thing that we
Yeah,
submit.
and you brought that up already, so yeah, I'm good. Any other comments or questions? Okay.
No. New business?
I just have one real quick, and I apologize. So today, myself, Tom Coulter, Joyce, Mark Tisdale, and Steve Cavey joined us. We began the process of us looking at the potential of an upcoming task force on addressing prior to the vote of this building on what to do with the south building, the Wilkins, and the Jones. We'll be asking the town manager to recommend some folks for this task force. This task force would work through the school committee, because it is their buildings. And the idea would be that prior to the voters having to take a vote, that we have what I would call a site plan for the three buildings in terms of information. I'm a little, as you know, I live in town. I have heard some rumblings that the reason why this project is underway from one particular group is because we need to move the administration to the Wilkins. I want to go on the record as the superintendent that the Wilkins, as either an early childhood center or a preschool, is on the table as the priority because of us not having the ability to service the kids in this building, and, to be quite honest, this building not having the potential access. So we're having some discussions that will have to go to the select board, because if we turn over a building, they need to know what are we going to do with this building, whatever that means, or other potential plans that the town may have with public safety facility, i.e. police department, and potentially some horse trading that could take place, if you will, and around facilities and so on. So the idea is to put a working group together that can provide the public further information that this is a plan that has a lot of other things that could be very beneficial long-term to the town, so that we're just, my pet peeve is, in this particular project, my understanding is that the South School is not being torn down as part of the project. So what do you do with a facility that we feel very strongly is no longer available or appropriate for education? What is it appropriate for without millions upon millions upon millions of whatever? So is it just a tear down? The select board nor the school committee are going to want to have responsibility for just keeping a building closed and what goes with that, which we all know long-term is not a good idea. So I just wanted to note, I'll be bringing that formally to the school committee. I've asked Mr. Coulter to bring it to the select board, and we'll have a working committee of, I'm going to say probably 5 to 7 people, just really taking a look at what's this look like. We do have some planning that's taking place in the town about use of facilities. And we all know, as those of us that are local, that there's been a lot of discussion about the need for a police station on the town side as potentially the next item as well. So just wanted to bring that out so that we are formally beginning those discussions. We have another site visit on the 23rd. Today we visited the Wilkins. And I can publicly say that I think our colleagues on the municipal side were very pleased to see the amount of uptakes and updates and information that we've done to that building. It's an old building that's really solid. It still needs a lot of other stuff, but the fact it's a solid building in comparison to the Jones School, as an example. So we're going to do the South School in our next visit and the middle school, so that everybody has a kind of full. Today we also did parts of this building, the academic side, if you will, where the kids are, which when you compare the two, you see a lot of differences between the Wilkins and the Jones. So just for public information so that everybody's on the same page.
Thrilled to hear that.
So that's what, we need to incorporate that in the PSR. That's kind of our.
By the way, if you're going to look at the South School, I've said this before, and maybe I'm howling at the wind, I wish it was considered 2 parcels. An 8.5 acre building parcel that the building's on, there's 15 acres behind that. That hopefully we can find some access from Fano Drive if we're going to build out Fano Drive. But 2 parcels makes that, just a really attractive building site for something. Anyway, moving along.
Is it wetlands?
Not on that. There's not a ton of wetlands on that 15 acres.
It's a pretty steep slope.
Yeah, there's some wetlands. There is access from the,
There's access up there.
yeah, but it's 15 acres. I mean, there's not a lot of 15 acre parcels in Stoughton anymore. Anyway, all right. Anything else before we adjourn? Hearing nothing. So on the 23rd, we have a virtual meeting, and you'll get a Dropbox link with the PSR to review, I don't know, 5 days before that, or is that too aggressive?
Probably much funny.
sort of up against it time-wise, so it's probably going to be like the 20th.
That's fine. It's like 1,000
I
pages.
mean, we're going
so-
to go over the key parts of it, so it is a lot of,
Why don't you read it and give us the notes?
with no spelling mistakes.
I used to use those a lot. Me too.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made, seconded. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you all. See you on the 23rd.